Okay, it's about to rain, so I don't know how much time I have, but let's just see how far I can get into it. Hello! Are you a potentially autistic adult who has found yourself relating to the life and lived experiences of autistic people, but you're not sure if you are autistic yourself? Maybe your TikTok algorithm and For You pages have been telling you you are autistic and you relate to some of these experiences, but sometimes they don't hit. Or maybe those algorithms have fully convinced you and you started to look into the diagnostic criteria for being autistic or having autism spectrum disorder, and you saw the criteria and you're like, well, now I'm feeling like I don't relate at all. I think I have some information to share with you, okay? Hey babes, welcome back to my channel. My name is Diamond. Thank you so much for joining me. We're about 2 weeks away from the anniversary of my adult autism diagnosis from last year. That means we're also a couple of weeks away from my 31st birthday, so woohoo. But basically, my credentials are that I got diagnosed as an adult, and I did not relate to the DSM-5 criteria before really going in. And I think I have a few ideas of why that might be. So stay tuned in this video with me when I go through the DSM-5 and explain how 3 main things can contribute to you not being able to relate to DSM-5 as an adult. Those 3 things I think are being extroverted, masking or not, and any other comorbidities. So I think these are the 3 main things that may prevent you from relating fully to the DSM-5. So I'm just going to go through my criteria to help you clarify some of those criteria for yourself. So please stay tuned. Okay, it's fully raining now. Okay. So, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders is used by clinicians to classify and to diagnose people with different mental disorders. In 2013, the DSM-5 was published. This was the DSM that was used for my assessment, and it had been one of the largest revisions of the DSM in history at the time from the previously published DSM-4 that was published in 1994. So, to give some perspective, I was born in 1994, and in 2013, I was in college. So like the DSM-4 may or may not have gotten me, so who's to say? Either way, just a fun fact. We're gonna be going through the DSM-5 today because like I said, that's the one that was used for my diagnosis. The autism spectrum disorder diagnostic criteria was revised last year, and so instead of saying manifested by the following, they just wanted more specific language that says manifested by all of the following. So you got to have the all of the above in section A. So there's 5 total sections A through E, and we're going to start with section A that has 3 of the all of the above that you must have. Only A and B have an all of the above situation, but let's start with A. So quickly, while I have your attention, I do just want to mention that I have a special announcement that I want to make at the end of this video. So please stay tuned to the end if you can. I could really use your support on something very fun and special. Okay, so section A talks about persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts as manifest by the following currently or by history. Examples are illustrative, not exhaustive. See text. So I don't know if the one I have is updated, but all of the following, okay, is what it should say now. One disclaimer I want to get into before getting fully into this DSM-5 is that the way that mental disorders are pathologized in our current society in the US is like really crazy to me. And the model that's used in the DSM-5 is a deficit model. So you're only noticing that you have one of these disorders if something is wrong in your life. So everything is framed at how you are failing, what are you doing wrong, what feels wrong to you, what is detrimental to your life. So I'm gonna try to keep it light for the most part, but I do have to talk about like the worst parts of being alive right now. In a sense. So basically in this part A1, you want to talk about how you fail at social reciprocity and how you do not do what is expected when people are trying to communicate to you. So basically all of the DSM-5 is talking about how you're failing in your particular personhood based on what other people think and what is normal in our society. So take all of the abnormal and all this type of language with a grain of salt when it comes to actually applying them to you. This is simply for the diagnostic criteria. So that's a quick disclaimer. Just keep that in mind. What is normal? You know, that is different for every person. So let's just keep that in mind. But anyways, so basically this is talking about the deficits in social communication, like it says. So let's just hop into the first for number 1 under section A, which says deficits in social emotional reciprocity ranging, for example, from abnormal social approach and failure of normal back and forth conversation to reduced sharing of interests, emotions, or affect to failure to initiate or respond to social interaction. So for me, part 1 is talking about how you reciprocate in a conversation or in a communication with someone. So one example I can give is
sometimes someone will say something to me in passing, and I think we all may do this where we're just like, oh, it's nice out today. You know, it's nice out. The clouds are on now. I'm actually really sick of being outside at this point. But you may say something like that, okay? For me personally, I don't feel the need to respond to that statement at all. I don't feel the need to make a face. I don't feel the need to say, oh, yeah, it is nice. You know, like, I don't have to do that. So I don't. I often don't, especially if I'm too worn out. Like, all of this stuff is exasperated when you're too tired to try to be a person. I know that it's polite to say, oh, yes, it is really nice. But why? What is the purpose? So sometimes I don't. And people are like, can you hear me? Like, da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, if you wanted to say something for me to respond, then say something that is worth responding to. Don't try to add me with that bullshit. And that's probably why people didn't like me.
But yeah, basically people will just say random things to you and you're kind of expected to reciprocate and respond. And oftentimes as an autistic person, you may not find the need to respond to things. I will also consider my abnormal social approach I think I have when it comes to meeting people or interacting with people. I don't always feel it necessary to reciprocate like the how are you? Oh, how are you? Like, I don't like to ask questions to people that I don't necessarily want the answers to. So I'm not going to ask you how you are if I don't care to know the information. And I think people expect you to ask them how they are, even if you don't know them. And because I don't feel that inherently, that means I'm having a deficit in this section. So let's move on to section 2 under category A still, which says deficits in nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction ranging, for example, from poorly integrated verbal and nonverbal communication to abnormalities in eye contact and body language or deficits in understanding and use of gestures to a total lack of facial expressions and nonverbal communication. So this is saying that you have a deficit in understanding nonverbal communications and using them yourself in a way that is appropriate for the context and the communication that you're having at that time. So the whole eye contact situation is coming up here. And I think of the 3 main things that may keep you from relating, I highly think that in category A overall, masking and being an extrovert may keep you from thinking that you relate to this. So you may think, okay, I know how to use nonverbal communication and like roll my eyes or like look away and look back or, you know, what have you. I know how to make eye contact or whatever. You may be thinking that you do know how to do those things at this point. And I think I was in a similar boat upon reading this criteria. But let's dive a little bit deeper. So again, are you making faces? Are your faces appropriate? Are you having like an expressive change that is related to what you're saying, or are you just no affect and you're not speaking or whatnot? And are those faces and those gestures appropriate to what you're saying?
Understanding the flow of conversation and how to sprinkle in verbal and nonverbal communication styles and techniques. I don't know about you. I mean, I don't know if you're autistic or holistic, but like is this stuff inherent to you? Like, do you inherently know when it's your turn to talk into a conversation? You inherently know what types of gestures and nonverbal communications to use based on the situation, who's involved, what hierarchies is involved. You always know exactly. I don't know. The autistic people, I feel like, are lying. There's no way y'all are allegedly out here just knowing how the flow of conversation goes. I feel like, I don't know.
Apparently, allegedly, autistic people know all of this stuff inherently. And what is it? Like, what?
What it is, what the fuck is it?
What are these rules of communications? How do you use specific nonverbal communications? Like, is there a book you can read about all types of nonverbal communications and they'll just tell you the rules in society? I feel like that's going to be different for every person's culture and every person's society they live in. So if there's no standard to how we need to communicate, how could I possibly be doing something wrong? You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like this one is really frustrating to me. And I think having these feelings towards it immediately kind of shows that I will have a deficit in this now. I do not know exactly how long to make eye contact. I often do not have lots of affect, and I occasionally am monotone. I definitely have these deficits, even though people think I'm very easy to talk to.
I'm often in the bathroom like, oh, hey girl, you look so cute. Like, where are you from? What's your name? Da da da. Making friends at the bar, like, you know, having impromptu parties at my house because I just met a nice group of people at the bar or whatever. I'm one of those people, but like, I don't inherently know how to make a conversation. I think people just find my style intriguing because I ask them a lot of questions and then we have a conversation about something deeper than just like, I don't know, BS. I don't inherently know how much eye contact to make, how much nonverbal, like nodding and stuff to do. I'm doing that all on the fly, and I'm actively thinking about it the whole time, especially if there's more than like 2 or 3 other people that I'm talking to. If I am not leading that discussion or that conversation, or I'm not monologuing, or someone else isn't leading it or doing the monologue, I'm literally stuck in the double Dutch limbo, which if you've ever done double Dutch and you've had to like jump in, you know that like, okay, go, oh, I should have went. That was the perfect time. Like, and then you're still just trying to rock and figure out like, when is the perfect time to jump in? And you often miss up on good opportunities when you're doing that, unless you're really good at double Dutch, which I am not. But that's where I end up in most conversations, and then wait for, you know, someone to ask me something or something that's a easy jump in. But for me, it's not natural. And for me, it doesn't happen naturally and readily. So I have to actively think about that. And that takes out a lot of energy. So even though I'm extroverted and I gain a lot of energy from being around people, I think I need a lot of recuperation time after that, because it takes a lot of energy to interact with other people, even though I love to do it. Okay, and that's what I have to say for number 2.
So if you think you're already really good at these types of nonverbal communications, I'd behoove you to consider how much you think about those types of things while you're talking to people and what you are really doing in a conversation. I felt like this one was one I really had to dissect a lot as someone who talks a lot. It talks a lot to people, and I give presentations and all this stuff. So I had to think like, well, do I really have an issue with this? And I think that's where you find you actually might. So I was wondering like, how am I so extroverted, but I still find that I need time to recuperate after hanging out with a bunch of people, because I love hanging out with people. I get so much energy just being around people. But that act of like the double Dutch is something that takes so much out of me. So consider like diving deep into evaluating yourself during conversations with 1 to like 4 people to understand how much you actually inherently understand these nonverbal types of communications. Okay, so let's move on to number 3 in section A, which says deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships, ranging, for example, from difficulties adjusting behavior to suit various social contexts, to difficulties in sharing imaginative play or making friends, to absence of interests and peers. So, are you good at developing and maintaining specific relationships? And can you adjust your behavior to fit specific situations with specific relationships? For me, this is kind of getting into the thought that autistic people are kind of lost in their own world and aren't really like interested in what other people have going on and what they're doing. And I think that can be true for many autistic people. And I think this is one of those ones that you can get a lot of kids with, because I think we typically think that kids should all play together. If there is a group of children and there is an activity to be had, I think usually we expect all of the children to want to participate in that play activity. And then when kids don't want to, I think that's like a red flag, and that will, I feel like, go under something like this. But as an adult, this may be a little bit more difficult to pinpoint for you. And I think the ones at play here are all of the three categories. So just some things to think about. As an adult, many autistic people find themselves isolated from their different social circles because we have deficits in communicating with other people. So if you never ask someone else how they're doing, like in my examples, many people may not want to hang out with you because you're not participating in that little politeness section. And so you may find yourself isolated or not being able to keep friends for very long. So one way to kind of just see this is to consider the friends that you have. How long have you had them? How did you determine that they were your friends? You may find that you haven't had any friends that are longer than like 3 to 5 years as an adult. That could be something here that you can consider. Well, why did those relationships end? What happened? And does that relate to me not being able to develop and maintain those relationships? Another aspect of this, I think, is, we're 3 out of 3. You have to have all 3 of these in A to get checked off to be autistic. And I think this one is really feeding into, if you have a problem in A1, A2, then you're definitely going to have a problem with developing and maintaining certain types of relationships. And I think that includes like friendships and professional relationships specifically. Because I think the hierarchy situation.
Something that is widely known about autistic people is that we don't have any respect for authority or like hierarchy in any sense. I'm one of those people. Some autistic people do really love authority, but for me, I don't respect hierarchy, and I think that you shouldn't be able to reduce my autonomy as a human being just because you've worked there longer than me or something like that. I don't think that you should be able to talk to me any kind of way just because your credentials are different than mine. So I found myself often in arguments with substitute teachers, professors, coaches, bosses, managers, whenever they try to reduce my autonomy or talk to me any kind of way. Sometimes I speak inappropriately to people of authority, and that's why I get into some of the trouble that I get into. But I don't think just because you're a coach or something, that means you can be mean or talk to people in a certain way. And I often stand up for other people who are being victims of this hierarchy as well. So I do that, but as a Black woman, I'm very familiar with code switching. I am attuned and understand the hierarchy. I understand that you're supposed to listen to and respect your boss, and I typically do if that's what they deserve. And I know how to switch into what I need to be doing, how I need to be acting in a certain situation because I'm Black. And I think that comes with being raised as a Black American. You know how to code switch. You know how to change up your behavior to fit in better into a specific environment. And so for me, this number 3 is not with any lacking of understanding and knowledge. Like, I have the knowledge of the social hierarchies and all of these relationships that may be important. I just don't give a damn. Like, I will occasionally knowingly fall out of that and be like, I no longer care about that social hierarchy, even though I know that it exists. I never cared about it to begin with. I was just aware of it. For me, inherently, hierarchies don't exist, and you don't get to talk to people anyway just because you are older than them or you have an extra few lines on your resume. You don't get to do that. I don't believe that you get to do that. And I believe that to my core, it is something that is a part of who I am. Autistic. Okay.
Cool. Okay. And I also wanted to say in this section, one last thing I wanted to say about developing and maintaining relationships is, as an adult, If you found that you haven't been able to keep any long-term friends, I think that's something that could clue you in to part 3 that may be a little bit more difficult. If you were a child, it's like, oh yeah, he has a problem making friends, because as a kid you're supposed to be making a ton of friends, right? But as an adult, no one is making friends, so it's hard to keep track of it in this way. But consider the friends you've had and why y'all stopped being friends and things like that can help you with, do you actually know what it takes to develop and maintain successful relationships? So just some food for thought for an adult who may have slipped through the cracks of autism. So with that, let's move on to part B, which has 4 separate sections, and you need to have at least 2 of the following. And this is what the general section says. Restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities as manifested by at least 2 of the following currently or by history. Examples are illustrative, not exhaustive. See text. So we're going to talk about 4 different types of restrictions that you have to have 2 of the 4 to count as autistic, I guess. So let's start with number 1. Stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects or speech, e.g. simple motor stereotype, lining up toys or flipping objects, echolalia, idiosyncratic phrases. Oh my god, what is an idiosyncratic phrase? Is that something that I relate to and I didn't even realize? But anyways, here we're talking about stimming.
Typical one you may see for autistic people is the rocking and the hand flapping or the hand shaking. I do the hand shaking one when I'm really, really excited about something, and I'll like jump up and down. But because that's so obvious, people could clock my autism. If they were to see me doing that in public, I often don't. I often prevent myself from doing that, and I'll instead wiggle my toes, or I'll do this. I'll curl, twist my hair, grab my hair, because that's something that femme people do, and you can do that and it's okay. And no one can see you wiggling your toes. I will often clench my jaw or bite the inside of my mouth. Both my mom and I do that. It's very not good, but when you've been suppressing your stims your whole life, it kind of like manifests into things that could become a little bit more negative depending on how you do it. So there are such thing as negative stimming, but some other types of stimming are like verbal or like echolalia. I do that a lot for like some of my favorite movies. My mom and I used to quote Shrek down. I think I still know most of the dialogue to that film. And anytime I just hear something that sounds really nice, I'll repeat it. And sometimes it could be like borderline politically incorrect because some people have accents and the way they say stuff sounds funny, and I repeat it and I'm like, I'm not teasing you, I really liked it, and I'm like, I'm trying to be like you, my boy. So I love the echolalia. Let's think about visual stimming. I like to have sparkles on my nails. I think I really like just how they, in the sun, it's so nice. And I like to just like go like this with my fingers on them. I love having long nails for that. That sound, that's a stim for me. And then another type of stim that I think is lesser known is like a thought stim. Like you may think of something repetitively just for fun because it's calming you down. Sometimes I jump into similar daydreams if I need to find some sort of calm and I'm in a place where I can't like move a lot. I'll like think of a scenario or like, and it's usually the same one or like the same few. Some people like to think of like mantras or things like that. Sometimes that can be considered stimming and it's just fully within you. I'm highlighting these kind of secretive stims because I'm assuming you're an adult who did not get assessed as a kid, and now you found a way to cover up your stims and mask them. And so consider those ones that are a little bit lesser known before you write off yourself as someone who stims or not right away. I thought I was someone who did not stim at all. And now that I've like learned about more types of stimming, I do it a lot. I do it all the time. I do it constantly. And now that I'm like unmasked, I do it 24/7. I feel like in my sleep, I'm still clenching my teeth. No, literally in my sleep, I'm still clenching my teeth. That's actually a problem. But anyways, that's what I have to say on stims.
I think the one that's gonna pop out the most when it comes to preventing you from relating to stims is definitely masking. As an adult, if you have certain self-stimulatory behavior that you know that you do, you probably have suppressed them through your lifetime, and they manifest differently now. So like I said, the little incognito ones about wiggling your toes and biting the insides of like your mouth or your jaw. Like, consider more hidden repetitive behaviors that you may do as an adult, because these are things that you can hide. So I think masking largely is one that keeps you from thinking that you STEM. And I wanted to make one more extra comment about suppressing STEMs and them turning into negative. That won't always happen, but the more you feel ashamed and that you have to hide your STEMs, the more likely that they are to manifest in a more negative way. Okay, so please STEM as an adult. If you don't want to do it in front of people, please do it when you get home. Just, you want to make sure you get those out, because if you suppress them, they're going to come up anyway. You're going to STEM regardless. If you are autistic especially, everyone STEMs, but you're going to STEM as an autistic person. And when you don't allow yourself to do that, that is harmful to you. So keep that in mind. Even if you find that you aren't autistic, you don't relate to enough of these, let yourself STEM. That's for everyone, please. Okay, cool. So let's move on to part 2 of B, or B2, which says, insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines or ritualized patterns, or verbal, nonverbal behavior, e.g. extreme distress at small changes, difficulty with transitions, rigid thinking patterns, greeting rituals, need to take the same route or eat the same food every day.
And so for me, this doesn't really manifest as much because I also have ADHD. So some of my autism is masked by ADHD and vice versa. And so when it comes to insistence on sameness, I don't have much of that because I need variety to keep me from like being painfully bored is such a real thing for people with ADHD or ADHDers. Anyways, for me, this does manifest when it comes to work and school, when it comes to commuting specifically, or the quick example of your assigned seat in college. I know we don't have those, but I think it's an spoken rule that wherever you sit on the first day of class in college is where you'll sit for the rest of the semester. I find that to be true. I found that to be true. I know people were just saying like, oh, it's not spoken, but it's like kind of true. For me, it's true. I'm sitting in the front of the class because I need to see the board and I'm here to learn. Don't be in my seat tomorrow. Don't be in my seat the next day. Don't be in my seat at the last week of class. That is my seat and I will be sitting there every day in this class that meets at the same time every week. Okay? Thank you. Right? Like it has to be the same. And I feel similarly, but less. I'm not about to like stop anyone from sitting in my seat on the bus. But when I would commute to work on public transit, I would typically try to sit in the same seat on the bus that I would take the same bus, with the same route, with the same numbers. And if there was ever a detour, that would really throw me off. And I would typically either not go to work or be extremely late for work and not do anything that day or not get enough done that day that I wanted because I lost so much steam in that detour. And if I'm driving to work, which I was doing like recently here, if there was ever a road blockage or anything like that had to take me on a detour or something, that threw me off. Even though Google Maps will reroute me and it's completely fine. I actually like driving, but just the detour of it all fills me with so much rage. It's like, I want to drive off the road. And I'm not joking. That is so serious. I have to bring it up later. Like, that's how much it infuriates me. And it puts a whole dampen on my whole day. And that's when that's when it's becoming a deficit, in this model or whatever. I'm only talking about things that are really a problem here. So that's my insistence on sameness and ritualized stuff. I have to listen to music while I'm in the shower. I have to brush my teeth in the shower, or else it's just a really awful experience. I have to put things on in threes. So if I need to pump something, I need to do 3 pumps or like 3 pats or something. I don't know why. I don't think it's an OCD thing, because sometimes if I don't do it, like, the world is not going to end, but I feel most comfortable in that ritual of 3. And you may have noticed that a lot of my videos have like 3 parts with 3 subparts or something. I like the number 3. And I think that's one of my like secret rituals or whatever. So that's what I have to say about insistence on sameness.
Okay, and before we move into the next one, I want to just highlight the deficit model here that's present in this one. So as you can see, of course, masking and having a comorbid conditions such as autism or maybe any other physical disability, you may need to have certain things on specific days regardless of what you need. Those could cover up these types of inflexible routines. But I do just want to highlight the pathologizing in here. Like, I don't think it's inherently a bad thing if you feel inflexible to changes and that's hard for you. That's a deficit. All of a sudden it's a deficit because I get so upset because I needed to reroute my commute. Yeah, I guess so. But so I'm demonstrating that, like, you have to think about the worst things and view yourself through this, like, negative light. Like, I'm a bad person because detours cause me distress. Like, I feel like that's what this is saying from what I just said, right? The thing that caused me distress was taking a different route to work. And that's the deficit. And so, like, but that's a part of me. Like, that's how I view it, interacts with the world. So it's like, that's wrong. I'm wrong. Like, you're going to sit here and tell me that I'm wrong? Like, so just keep that in mind, right? Don't view it in that way. Just view it in that way for them. But yeah, if you're masking, you may just be going with the flow, biting your lip and keeping it moving, and that stuff is causing you this amount of despair, but you're not letting it, like, you're just suppressing those feelings. So consider these types of things that you may be sensitive to, or be like, the change of plans is really you throwing you off, but you just like, well, I can move on, so I'm like not autistic. The fact that you had to say I need to move on means that's something that caused you distress in the first place, right? So don't be so hard on yourself. You don't have to, like, want to hit yourself in the head and, like, cancel your whole day because you had to do the detour. I think just wanting to punch the wheel is enough of distress that this would count for you. So just consider that as an adult. You know that you have to move on and deal with the changes of life, but consider how much that hurts you and takes away from you and your thoughts around those sudden changes in life. Like, is it, oh, that's fine, I can just da-da-da, or is it like, I'm screwed, I'm cooked, I'm like, you start to panic, like, or do you feel all this anxiety bubbling up? Like, you may have anxiety. That's a large comorbidity for autism. Like, I had anxiety. I was diagnosed with anxiety in college because those things are people recognize easily. Yes, I have anxiety about when things change, and they're like, oh, you're just anxious, you don't have autism. But it's like, see how these things can feed in. So I'm thinking masking and other comorbidities may have prevented you from seeing how small changes in your routine actually affect you. So just consider that as an adult, as people who, we have to be responsible and we have to go with the flow sometimes. Think about how that makes you feel when something causes you distress that's changing your routine. I think that will give you that insight with whether or not you actually relate to this section, okay? To part B2. All right, so now let's move into part B3. So part B3 says, highly restricted fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus, e.g. strong attachment to or preoccupation with unusual objects, excessive circumscribed or perseverative interests. Okay, yeah. We're talking about special interests, and before we even get into outside daytime diamond on this one, I just want to say that who are these people to tell you what's inappropriate, what is an unusual object? You know what I mean? I know some kids may like a specific rock or something, kids, I feel like, gravitate towards weird objects all the time. So, like, how can you tell that it's, like, abnormal besides, like, if you take it away, they can't stop screaming or something? I feel like that's things that you can easily recognize in a kid, but as an adult, you may not. So first, let's head out. Let's talk to Outside Diamond to talk about her.
You got this, Travis. Make them wait for it.
Special interests.
I have quite a few. I think with ADHD, my interests vary widely, but they all have like a similar thread. I would say in general, my special interests are storytelling, and my favorite types of storytelling are through animated television shows or anime, manga or webtoons, and video games. Classic trifecta, right? Or like even board games, like any sort of story that can be told through an activity or a game or animation. Like I'm there for that. I really love puzzles and how that, manifests. So basically that is the main basis of my special interests, which has led me to have special interest in Animal Crossing and Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra and all the books and all the comics and all the. I want to quickly tell a story about a friend that I've met in the past couple years at a conference, and he was telling me like, "Oh, I'm watching the Avatar series. Have you ever seen it? Have I ever seen it? Am I a Nikki fan? Pull up in the Sri Lanka. So what? I ended up spending from lunch of that day when he told me to 6 a.m. the next day talking to this man about this show. I'm telling you, I'm making sure I'm sitting next to him on the bus when we go to dinner. I'm making sure we're sitting next to each other at dinner so we can continue to talk. I'm making sure when we're leaving dinner, we had just met, mind you. I'm like, hey, do you want to come to my hotel room to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender on my computer that I'm hooking up because I made sure to bring my HDMI cord to this conference? Like, so serious, not playing, dead ass. And we're still friends. He has also watched Legend of Korra now, and yes, we have talked about it. I made sure to follow up, and like, I missed my train the next day because we stayed up till 6 a.m. watching this show because we had to watch all of season 3. If you've ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, you know season 3. Okay, so clearly special interest is the stuff you're obsessed with, and people can see it as a bad thing because sometimes you don't want to talk about anything besides your special interest. That can make it hard to make friends if you only want to make friends who have your special interest, but it's totally fine if your friends also have that same special interest. But anyways, that's how you can see it in a deficit way, that like, if I only get excited and passionate if I'm talking about that show, that doesn't really help me get anywhere in life per se, particularly unless I start making YouTube essays about Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I am not. I've watched a lot of them though. But anyways, that's just one. So please tell me a little bit about your special interests in the comments. I'm actually really curious if they overlap with any of mine.
So even from the inserted clip, you will see how much I light up just talking about one of my special interests, or one of the shows that relates to my special interests. But anyway, in this section, you may be considering masking and other comorbidities as something that may prevent you from recognizing this in yourself as an adult. I think as an adult, special interests are hard to delineate because we have so many responsibilities that it's hard to pinpoint our hobbies and then delineate the special interests underneath that. But I think one thing about special interests is that you're always going to gravitate towards them. You're always going to want to be doing them or looking into them, researching them. So if you find yourself coming back to these same types of things and feeling really upset when you can't do those things, or feeling really excited when you can do those things or can talk about them, like, those are some things that you maybe can just keep track of. Like, if there are some things that you're neglecting your other responsibilities, like me missing my train to watch Avatar, like, how deep are you? Like, you can measure it from that type of intensity. Like, are you up all night doing this? And it's not just reclaiming my time and getting back my free time. It's no, I would rather spend 8 hours doing this every day, you know? Those are some questions you may pose yourself as an adult to identify some of your special interests nowadays. Also consider the things that you were into as a kid, because you were autistic from start to finish, if you are. And so oftentimes those special interests will stay with us the whole time if we're autistic. Now, if you have ADHD, again, like, I feel like those types of comorbidities can make it difficult and kind of cover up special interests sometimes when you have so many different ones. But think about some of those things that you were interested in as a kid and you still get into. How intense was your interest in those certain hobbies and activities? So consider that. And with that, let's move on to B4, which is saying, my hands are so sweaty, my fingerprints aren't matching. Okay. Hyper or hypoactivity to sensory input or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment, e.g., apparent indifference to pain/temperature, adverse response to specific sounds or textures, excessive smelling or touching of objects, visual fascination with lights or movement. So this is talking about your sensory sensitivities and needs. So I'm going to start with my list of my adverse sensory experiences, if that's okay. First, I'm a person who does not particularly like to be touched. I think one quote I had as a younger person, I'm talking like middle school and high school, I've always just been like, well, why do you have to touch me? Like, I think I often brought up when people laugh and they like touch you or like touch your shoulder or your thigh or something. I'm like, why do you feel the need to do that? Why do you have to touch me? Or when someone's telling you something and they like, why do you do that? That's weird. And that's just one for me. Of course, over time, I have friends and partners and things like that. It's not crazy, but crazy enough, okay? Like, and I don't want to do that to myself, right? You don't want to say, oh, it's not like to that level or this level. The level is the level and it is enough, okay? If you're being caused distress because someone is touching you, that is enough to count. Okay. For me, I don't like to wear pants and shoes. That's been present since I was a child. I will just often be barefoot with no pants on. I used to wear a dress every day in kindergarten and like would throw fits when I had to wear pants and stuff until, later on, I was like, oh, I'm into jeans and bell bottoms and stuff. But to this day, my most ideal state of being is no shoes and no pants.
I'm actually out here barefoot in a dress, and that's like my prime state of being.
Anyways,
my specific one sensory thing that's really going to throw me off is coconut flakes. Please, 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 please holla if you hear me with the coconut flakes, because I love the taste of coconut. I love a pina colada. I love a like coconut flavored candy or something. But when it comes to actually having the coconut flakes, I'm telling you, and not just I dislike it, like I can't have that sensation in my mouth. I'm going to throw up, or I'm going to be so dramatic about it. Like, I feel like being autistic is just, you're so dramatic about it. And I think that's okay. Like, you experience the world differently, you perceive it differently. So for me, the coconut flakes is like, you just put, and I was about to say put a hairball in my mouth, because I think that's more, but if you put a hairball in my mouth, you're my sworn enemy for life, actually. Because having hair in my mouth is similar to the coconut flakes, and I think you'll get it now, right? Like, you can't do it. You can't do it, okay? Like, my skin is crawling thinking about it. Like, it's not just I don't like it. I can't have it. In the past, I had a friend who put coconut flakes in this zucchini bread or banana bread that he had made me. Favorite. I love banana bread and zucchini bread without nuts. And he had tried to sneak in some coconut flakes to see if I would notice. I spit his bread out and said, don't you ever, like, we had an argument. Like, it's not okay. Okay. I'm autistic.
I have to wear my noise canceling headphones in public. And this is kind of related to my other sensory experience, where I think low consistent sounds can be really distracting to me, which I played music in my noise canceling headphones because for my ADHD, having the music helps me focus on the task, because I'm drowning out every other sound that can be different, and because I will, know the song or be familiar with what I'm going on in my head, I can focus on my task and keep it moving. But also that helps drown out those smaller sounds that seem to stick out to me, that make it harder and harder to stay present in any given moment. So like, for example,
like if there's a small electronic device going or a fan is going, if I'm like feeling really low or really tired, it may be hard for me to tune out that sound. And so I can like feel it in my teeth. Like if a small fan, like a portable fan is on the table, I can feel the vibration of that fan in my teeth, and I feel like I can feel it in my body, and it has to stop, or else I can't focus on anything else. It's like irritating me more and more and more and more until I'm just going to scream. And that's usually only when I'm tired. Sometimes if I'm feeling really good, I can like tune these things out. And this is what autistic people do in general. When they have a sound in the background, they can just ignore it quickly because their body adapts to that environmental stimulus faster than maybe an autistic person. We're taking it like all in our own special way, each of us.
Okay. And I also hate to hear that it has to be, again, the thing that causes you so much distress is going to help them identify this. Okay, and I will say your sensory sensitivities will be heightened when you're really tired or really burnt out or really just don't have the capacity to do it. I think that's a good point to try to start and take notes of the things that are really, really bothering you. And I think as an adult, it's different than, you know, noticing a kid is throwing a tantrum when something isn't going their way, or like if they're freaking out because something is too sticky or their tag is too itchy. You can usually notice for children, but adults, we kind of have to grin and bear it. So I want you to think about those times at work when you're really about to clock out because something just happened. Okay, like your coworker is just tapping that pencil and you're like, I'm either about to cuss her out and get fired, or I need to find a way to walk out this room right now. I need to find a way to remove myself right now. I think these are ways that we can kind of pinpoint these sensory experiences for ourselves as an adult, because I think as an adult, everyone automatically masks because we just have to have a certain air of responsibility and letting things go. But when you're autistic, you can't really do that. So think about a time where you flipped out or like couldn't hide how you were feeling about a specific sensory experience, and maybe you were like, just cut the light off, like, you know, and that's enough distress to count that in your list. If you can't stop thinking about that itchy tag, I just keep thinking about work because I feel like adults work, right? And so if you're at work and you feel like you can't finish that email because you keep your tag and you just gotta like hold it like this to finish the email or something, honey, you have a sensory sensitivity for that tag, you know, and that may be consistent for many of your clothes and stuff. I found that when I wear, you know, itchy bras to work, I can't focus anymore. And it's like, okay, is it just a bad bra, or is it that a sensory situation that you can no longer do? Like, it's no point in letting yourself suffer through those things when you can just take the bra off and write the email. You know what I'm saying? But consider those things at work, or, you know, when you feel like you have bubbled over, what was the sensory experience there? Like, what made you kind of lose it as an adult? And I feel like those may tell you your sensitivities. Unfortunately, they're usually the really bad things, but let's quickly talk about some of the good sensory experiences. Back outside.
On the other hand, I am also a sensory seeker, meaning I love to be in spaces where it's socially acceptable to yell in public. So amusement parks, sporting events, concerts, bars, like because the music is really loud, you have to yell at the person next to you. I love that. I love being in the crowd. I love yelling. I'm the one crying at the concert. I'm just so into it. I'm screaming my head off at the amusement park. These are things that make me feel so happy. Like when I talk about indescribable happiness, that's where you'll find it for me. I'm just out here screaming and no one is telling me that it's not okay because I'm in the place where we can scream. Okay. That makes me feel good. That rejuvenates me. I love it. I love to do it. That's all I have to say about So then lastly, C, D, and E are
C. Symptoms must be present in early developmental period, but may not manifest until social demands exceed limited capacities or may be masked by learned strategies in later life.
And it's basically saying, yeah, you have to have had these your whole life because you were born autistic, you die autistic, you're autistic. It's a state of being. It's the way your brain is wired, the way you perceive the world is different. How different is it? I feel like we all perceive the world differently. So let me not. Okay.
You will find that these traits were present for you also in early childhood, although they may not have been as much as a problem for you because you may have been like me, where the people who took care of you let you be a weird kid and didn't make you feel bad about it, basically. My mom ended up accommodating me for a lot of the struggles that I had as a kid, and like bought me joke books and how to make friend books and things like that, like occupational therapy essentially, that made my childhood really easy. And so when I got to like middle school and college, for the most part, is really where it fell apart because she wasn't there to take care of me and help guide me through the world. When I was out on my own is when I started to get diagnosed with depression, anxiety, needing a therapist, needing pills, and it just got like worse and worse and worse as the burnouts accumulated when I wasn't being accommodated for in my mother's house. So I wanted to highlight here that it's how your brain is always wired. It's always going to be that way, so it always was that way. And so you will have traits that were present for you as a child, okay? And
for me, I'm just back to being a kid and always gathering up the prettiest people in my class and telling them stories during recess. I talk a little bit more about that on my Substack, my first post. Once you get to this point of your research and you're kind of realizing, I'm autistic, you'll start to reframe your entire life through these lens. And just be sure that you can think of a few instances from when you were a child and these things were true. I think by the time you get here and you feel like you relate, you will be able to think of instances for this in your past.
Again, it's in this negative way where things are going wrong. And again, I think it's too late. But yes, let's move to part D, which says, symptoms cause clinically significant impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of current functioning.
All of this is significant, right, in some sort of way. So this is where I like to bring up the instance that I was kicked off of 2 softball teams in college. The first being, I went to college. I went to school in the state of Michigan. I'm not going to say which school, but I walked onto the softball team, which was Division III MAC, if that means anything to you. So decent. But I walked onto the team. I was the bullpen catcher. Was having a great time besides the 4 a.m. workouts that were insane. And if anyone was late, we had to run suicides until everyone showed up or whatever. And one day this girl did not show up until really late. And so we had to do suicides most of the practice. And at the end, it was like, we're a team, blah, 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 we're getting yelled at or whatever. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't know what I was sitting there. My face was probably, toot that thing up. My face was probably tooted up looking crazy, but the reason they kicked me off the softball team was because they said I had an attitude problem and brought up this specific instance where I'm like, okay, how am I supposed to feel at 5 a.m, post an excruciating practice, and we're getting yelled at, and I'm supposed to just take it with a smile? What face did you want me to have? I'm upset, and then we're trying to pick it back up. Yeah, we're a team. I'm like, yeah, I get that, but also I hate all of you bitches right now. I hate each and every one of you. But I didn't actually hate them. I was just really upset and I was really tired. My body hurts, okay? And it hurt then too. But I just thought it was just okay because I was an athlete or whatever. Hindsight is 2020. But so I got kicked off of that softball team. And so because I was so passionate about softball, I had worked all through middle school and high school working towards this goal and just got it ripped away. I was like, okay, well, let me try out for the club team. I made onto the club team, stayed for 2 seasons, and then they ended up voting me off of that team for a similar reason, even though it definitely was not that. I don't have attitude. Many girls on that team said I was the most smiley person they have ever met, and just they were trying to tell me why they kicked me off the team, and they could not come up with an exact answer. They were just like, you're mean. And I'm like, I'm not mean. I'm smiling all the time. I love playing softball. I love playing softball with y'all. What are you saying? And they're like, well, you say things or you make people feel a certain type of way or something. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I think these are the type of peer reviews I'm talking about, that it's just people are saying you make me feel weird. You do weird shit. You are strange. And it's and they don't want you to be around them. And so I got kicked off of that team too and couldn't play the sport. I feel passionately about softball to this day. I think it was one of my special interests for sure. And worked so hard to do that and be good, and went to clinics, spent weekends and weekend mornings all through high school, going conditioning and learning more about softball and just practicing just to get kicked off because I'm weird. Damn, And I feel like a similar thing happened to me after I was done with softball. I couldn't do it anymore. I went deep into chemistry and got the highest possible degree that you could literally get, and still was like, oh, you're too weird. You work too slow. The academia of it all is you can't do this now. You can't do what you wanted to do because you're weird and you act strange because you're autistic. Okay, please reference my I got fired for being autistic video if you care to know more about that story. But yeah, this is in the part D where the symptoms cause clinically significant impairment. And this is where I'm like, this deficit model sucks because, you know, in those instances, I could have found out that I was autistic, but, you know, I'm thinking any other reason. Oh, they think I have attitude because I'm a black girl. No one was black on the team, on that first team. And the second team, there were other black girls, specifically one that was way meaner than me, who was also a cutie, but she wasn't weird like me. So I don't know. I kind of chalked it up to that. Like, I don't know, people just didn't like me sometimes. And I think that's okay. I think people don't have to like you, but I feel like the consistency of that throughout my life and not understanding really why. In the deficit models, there was like, something has to go so wrong for you to figure it out. And I just think that's an awful model to put it in. Like, I couldn't be diagnosed as a child because being autistic as a child was not a problem, because my mom accommodated me and she let me be this weird child who I was, and there was no issue. The other kids at my little hoity-toity little art school, elementary school, they were all chilling with how strange I was and I wore a dress every day or whatever. It's like, they don't see it as a problem until it's like hurting you. And I feel like at that point, it's too late. So I don't like this deficit model for that reason.
So yeah, this one's really sad, but if you're extroverted or masking through these types of events in your life, you may have just kind of, you know, thugged it out or like faked your way through it, just dealing with these terrible things and losing opportunities and you're not really sure why, and losing jobs, losing friends, losing the ability to do school or what have you. Like, that's occupationally significant. Even just getting kicked off the team, that's significant, you know, like getting kicked out of the club or whatever, that's significant too. Especially if we really can't pinpoint the reasons, or the reasons are related to here. But you may have been able to mask your way through. And like for me, I'm extroverted. Again, masking and extroversion really like prevented me from relating to any of this stuff, because I was like, no, I'm okay. Like, I don't have any clinically significant impairments. Mind you, all of these things had already happened in my life by the time I started thinking about if I was autistic. And I didn't find any of these significant for some reason when first thinking about it. But you want to look at some of those tougher situations and you're just like, oh, it was fine because I got over it. But how long did it take you to get over it? Did you really get over it? Like, what was the reasons, you know? And so for me, luckily, like I said, extroverted, masking, I was able to make a bunch of friends and have them to be there for me to support me. So I may not have realized I was having such a bad time because I have friends to commiserate with and to talk with. And when I got kicked off of all those teams, I still had friends that I could lean on to help me through that situation. And that may be the same for you. If you've been able to mask really well and you have been able to keep these long, strong friendships, you may have been supported enough to move through your life in a somewhat successful way. And I think this is where people start saying, well, you're not autistic, nothing's wrong with you because you're okay. And it's like, why am I okay? Because I keep pushing it down, or because people are helping me? And that's where I'm just like, the whole level 1, 2, 3 of autism is just BS. And we won't talk about it today, but it's like, I wouldn't have made it through these types of situations without the friends and family that I had to support me. And other people don't see that when they see my successes and think it's okay, but it wasn't okay for me at the time. And I would not have been okay if I didn't have people to help me. So consider that for yourself, like the support that other people give you that's made it easy for you to avoid being diagnosed. Like, you know, you could be having all of these issues and you could just be getting diagnosed with other types of neurovariants, which we'll talk about in the next section. But at that point, I was diagnosed with depression when I got kicked off the second softball team. Like, I was starting to take pills. Like, things were not okay for me, but I had friends and stuff, so it was okay, and I made it through, right? And I was talking to professionals. I had the privilege to go get therapy and get help and go to the student wellness centers and stuff like that. But without that help, I would not have been okay. So consider that when you're thinking about this for yourself, that there were things that you did for yourself to help yourself, to accommodate yourself. And I think that's the tough one as an adult, to think about, that you did things to support yourself and helped you along, or your friends or what have you. And those are things that we often overlook when it's like, well, I must be not super autistic because I didn't drop out of school. I made it through school. And it's like, well, was it easy for you to stay in school or what? You know? So just more things to consider, okay? So with that, let's move to the last one, which is not as sad, thank goodness. But basically, part E, the final part, says, these disturbances are not better explained by intellectual disability, intellectual developmental disorder, or global developmental delay. Intellectual disability and autism spectrum disorder frequently co-occur. To make comorbid diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder and intellectual disability, social communication should be below that expected for general developmental level. So they're saying that it's often comorbid with autism that you have some other intellectual disability, but ultimately they're saying that all your symptoms can't be then explained by something else, such as ADHD, OCD, BPD, PTSD, CPTSD, schizophrenia, things like that. Like you're going through psychosis and stuff that could be making it difficult and people aren't liking you and you're getting fired and stuff. Like there's a lot of symptoms to a lot of other neural variances that have similar symptoms, but so basically you have to rule out everything else when getting your autism diagnosis. So that one I don't really have how it could be hidden, but as I've been mentioning throughout, that if you had the ability and privilege to see healthcare, mental healthcare, behavioral specialists throughout your life, you may have been diagnosed with something else. You may already have current diagnoses like depression, anxiety, bipolar, OCD perhaps, that all together very much underneath it could just be autism. So consider the other diagnoses you may have gotten and how they could be related to those other ones. I personally was only diagnosed with depression and anxiety before getting an autism diagnosis. Okay, so we've gotten through the whole DSM-5 finally. So it's really hard to go through all of these steps, so I hope you enjoyed Outdoor Sunny Diamond, who I was hoping to recreate today, but it rained. Hopefully you enjoyed Indoor Cozy Diamond also to help interject to keep our thoughts going. And as you can see, masking, being extroverted, and having other comorbidities will prevent you from seeing through the convoluted language of this diagnostic manual to see how you actually relate in a lived experience for autism. I hope that my stories have helped you to clarify some of this enigma and how some of these things can be hidden through masking and just growing up and learning that there's just certain things you can't do in public or whatever. So I hope you enjoyed that. And actually, this going through the DSM-5 is only one of the 3 steps that I think you should take before getting your adult autism assessment. Is actually step 2 to me. And I have put that together in a video that I will be sharing next, with this being the 2nd step. So you've already finished some of it. So in the next video, I'll be talking about all 3 of those steps and then exactly what happened during my diagnosis and then what happened, of course, shortly after. So please stay tuned for that one. And if you have any other questions, because here I've seemed to talk a lot, but I've only shared a very small portion of my autistic experience. So I'd be happy to learn more about yours and things that you related to in this video. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have for me, either in the comments down below, in my Fresh Cut server, or on my Substack, where I'm assuming if you're still here in this video, you're caring about me a little bit more. Thank you so much for returning. If you are, there has been a large gap between this video and my How I Got Fired for Being Autistic video. And there are many reasons for that, including passing out while editing that video. Just uploading your trauma on the internet is actually really hard. Who would have thought? But I wrote a Substack post about what was going on for me at that time. I have moved. I have gotten emergency dental surgery. I have been to Italy. Like, I have done a lot of things in the meantime. So please be sure to follow me on these extracurricular socials to keep up with me in the meantime, between videos. And for a final special announcement, I will be streaming on Twitch for the first time next week on July 2nd. I'm thinking like 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, but we'll see. So please come support me in my first stream there. We'll be playing Date Everything, which I think will be very fun. So catch me there, be square, you know, whatever. And I will see you in the next video about my 3-step assessment prep. Peace out.